Ladies and gentlemen, how do?
Today is the day that Labour's welfare reform bill is voted on. Starmer faces a sizable rebellion, and quite rightly so, as this bill represents everything that is the opposite of what Labour principles on fairness and equality are all about, as it demonises the most vulnerable in society, the sick and disabled. Labour are hoping to win over the rebels with their amendments and claim that only new PIP claimants will be affected by the changes and that they have consulted disabled groups on the changes, but disabled groups deny they have had any such consultation, and Labour say that they are having a full review of PIP being headed by Sir Stephen Tibbs and they will act on the findings of his review, but they want this amended welfare bill voted on before that review has begun. This is truly arse about face. They claim that this bill makes the welfare system both fairer and more sustainable, and that it is not about them trying to balance the books without increasing taxes, but once again they have run away from doing the really difficult thing, and that is equalizing the tax system. And I am not talking about a wealth tax, even though that would be a great thing. It's the UK tax system that needs reform, not the welfare system. There are a few tweaks that would raise far more money than these punitive welfare reforms would, and would mean that the wealthiest actually begin to pay their fair share. Examples of this include corporate tax, making it the same rate as PAYE, and taxing the profits from shares and dividends. Why should those with money pay less tax than the average person does? The sick and disabled should not be the ones footing the bill and getting squeezed so that Labour, especially Rachel Reeves, can stay within the imaginary fiscal rules. These fiscal rules are nonsense. They shift the goalposts on them to suit their agenda. Well, Labour have now managed the trifecta. They've penalised the old immigrants and now the lowest of the low, those who are sick and disabled.
The Prime Minister has told this programme that those who need to be protected will be.
The principles are relatively straightforward to me, which is if you can work, you should work. If you need help and support to get into work, and the government should be providing that support and help to get into work. If you do have conditions, disabilities that mean it is impossible for you to work, then you need to be properly protected and supported.
It's Martin here. You currently have, it's being spoken of, 120 members of your own party who are talking about trying to stamp down the benefits bill that will cut personal independence payments. Now, I should declare an interest here. I chair a mental health charity. Our research shows these potential changes are devastating for people with mental health. The assessment was already poor for people with mental health. But what we have under the new system, where you get points if you're in long-term sick or disabled, you get points in lots of different categories. And currently you have to have a certain number of points to be able to claim PIP. Under the new system, if you don't have 4 points in one category, you won't get PIP. Well, for people who have mental health problems, they will have problems with cleaning and dressing and budgeting and bathing themselves to a level of extent, because mental health is universal. So people with mental health problems are more likely to fail the new PIP tests than anyone else. And many of them say it will actually stop them working because they won't have the funds to work. Is this Labour values?
Well, first of all, I applaud you for chairing the mental health charity. And if you do that, you'll recognise that this is a system that is failing millions of people, that condemns them to say they'll never work again in order to get their social security payments, that doesn't offer them the either right to try work, the guarantee that they won't lose their benefits, or the one-to-one help to get into work.
Sorry, Defence Secretary, PIP, we're talking about PIP. It is not an in-work benefit. It's a benefit for people whether they work or not. So I'm not sure why you've gone into work. Can we talk about the PIP analysis that's going to lead to potentially hundreds of thousands of people with mental and physical health problems getting money cut, which in many cases they're telling us will stop them being able to afford to make the adjustments they need to go to work?
No, indeed, and the problems with PIP are part of the failing system. We're in a situation now where more than 1,000 people a day are signing on for PIP.
Let me just call out some very blatant gaslighting here. That is a load of big, hairy, spherical shaped things that this Labour minister has just trotted out. Let me just correct it for him. There are possibly 1,000 new applications for PIP every day, but there are not 1,000 people actually in receipt of PIP every day. Let's get the facts straight here.
That's more than doubled since the end of the pandemic. It's part of 3 million people, essentially, who never can be in the workforce because of the health problems they face. And we want to make sure that if we have this safety net in the future, that we can direct the resources to those who need it most, and that we can put in place, including for those on PIP, the support to try and get into work so that they can start to earn for themselves. We've got a system at the moment that is failing millions of people, and if we want to see it survive and sustained in the future, we have to change it.
So you have 120 members of your own party who are very worried about the fact 1 in 4 people will lose their personal independence payment. Are they wrong to be worried about it? They should just back the bill and be happy. Is that what you're going to tell them?
Nobody's happy. Nobody finds change easy. But the big challenge here is we have a system that is failing millions of people. We came into government and we were elected to try and rebuild Britain, fix the broken parts of the system that we inherited from the previous government. We're setting about doing that. And by doing that, we'll be able to direct the social security payments most to those who need it most and can't work. And we'll be able to put in place the necessary support for those who may wish to and can work to be able to give them the chance to do so. And we can't do that without changing the system. And that's really at the heart of the choice next week when we face the welfare bill and the legislation in Parliament.
Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey, thank you very much for your time this morning and good luck at the NATO conference today.
Have any of that taken away and perhaps to have to rely on food banks? Am I going to end up in a situation where I may be sofa surfing or staying at families and friends because I can't afford my rent anymore, can't afford my utilities because my benefits have been cut?
Now by the Housing Minister, Matthew Pennycook. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Susanna.
We've heard this morning from Anna. We've also heard from Shirley, who is from the Taking the PIP campaign, very concerned. Already in the last 6 years, homelessness among disabled families has risen by 75%. What's going to happen when people can't use their PIP or the health component of their universal credit to top up their rent and bills? As the Housing Minister, you must be concerned about the consequences.
Well, the government is taking concerted action to drive down rates of homelessness. But on the principle of welfare reform, the government is determined to push forward because the system as it's currently constituted is failing people. It's failing young people, it's failing employers, it's failing taxpayers. So we don't think it's acceptable to say, let's continue with the status quo. I mean, we've discussed this on previous occasions,
Let me ask
Susanna.
you, why do you think it's failing the people who receive it, if the people who receive it say it's essential for them to live successful, productive, working lives in many cases?
Well, I think the system is failing people, and I think your viewers would acknowledge that in the sense that we know 1 in 8 young people are not in employment, education or training. Spending on incapacity and disability benefits has soared by £20 billion since the pandemic. The sustainability of the system is at risk, so we do have to take forward targeted reforms. The principles of those reforms remain the same, which is that those who can work should work. Those who want to work should have the support put in place to allow them to do so.
But in many of these cases, Minister, people are working. PIP is not a benefit for those who are out of work, although I'm sure people who are out of work also can claim PIP. But in many of the cases, and in fact in the cases that we've been covering this morning, those individuals are working and they say they would not be able to work if you take away their PIP. And in one of the cases we spoke to Alicia this morning, she thinks she is going to lose it and will no longer be able to work. So how is that going to help either her or the system? Well,
you'll forgive me and I hope appreciate why, Susanna, I'm not going to pass comment on individual cases. There's no way live on TV I can properly account for the needs and
that you can't say it's about helping people back into work who aren't working. Many, many millions of these people are working and receiving this.
No, but there's separate elements. There are separate elements of the reform, and the principles of the reform, as I've just laid out, remain the same. So we do know, for example, that those who do want to get back into work and not currently receiving the support that they're getting. That's why we're putting £1 billion of additional funding by the end of this Parliament into that employment support. We're recalibrating the incentives in the system between going to work and health benefits. That's an important measure. On PIP, though, and I'm happy to take this very straight on, PIP will remain an important non-means tested benefit going forward, but it hasn't been reviewed in some time, and we do need to look at how it can be better targeted, because I come back to the sustainability point, and I think your viewers will recognise this. A system which is seeing 1,000 people each and every day awarded PIP.
Let me just call out some very blatant gaslighting here that is a load of big hairy spherical shaped things that this Labour minister has just trotted out. Let me just correct it for him. There are possibly 1,000 new applications for PIP every day, but there are not 1,000 people actually in receipt of PIP every day. Let's get the facts straight here.
Is not a sustainable one. If we want that safety net to be there in years to come for those who might need it and who those on the highest needs need that support, we've got to look at reviewing it, got to ensure that it is properly targeted. And as you know, we're bringing forward legislation in the House of Commons this afternoon to that end. But I'm not going to comment on one specific people on your show will or won't be reassessed. The government's been very clear.
Dr. Bridton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome her words that recognise the need to enable disabled people to fulfil their potential. Since April, I've engaged with the government, making it clear I could not support the proposals on PIP. Our manifesto committed to championing the rights of disabled people and to the principle of working with disabled people. Having no public consultation on these plans excludes the voices of disabled people. This is not just about process. This makes disabled people worse off. The principle of fairness means disabled people had a legitimate expectation to be consulted, and in order to fulfil the Equality Act Section 149, Public Sector Equality Duty. Why did the Department for Work and Pensions choose not to consult with disabled people on PIP proposals, and what work will her department do to win back the trust of disabled people?
My honourable friend is a powerful voice, and I know she will always remain that in this House. We are absolutely committed to co-producing this PIP review led by Sir Stephen Tibbs. She may know we are also setting up collaboration committees on access to work and on pathways to work to make sure we really get this right. I look forward to meeting with her and many other disabled people and their organisations to absolutely make sure we get this right as we go forward.
I welcome progress, but I cannot countenance sick and disabled people being denied support to enable them to be independent in the future, and 150,000 people pushed into deeper policy, nor can disabled people across our country support these measures. It is a matter of conscience. So can I ask the Secretary of State if she could set out why we're voting on these matters tomorrow when the Tibbs review says that there could be real changes in the criteria that is used to assess people up to 4 points. It feels like signing a blank cheque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all agree that the welfare system needs reform, but many of us in this place believe that changes for disability support should not take place without listening to disabled people's voices and experiences. Over the last few days, I'm hopeful that the government has shown strength in listening and moving on what they've heard. However, I have a question on the sequencing. What is the logic of making changes to future claimants before finishing the Tibbs review, now co-produced with disabled people? Could this lead to not just 2 tiers, but 3 tiers? Those existing claimants, those new claimants who will lose out, and those post-Tibbs review.
On page 3 of her statement, the Secretary of State asks herself the rhetorical question about a 2-tier system. Can she simply confirm that somebody now eligible for personal independence payment gets it, somebody with a similar condition, whenever this bill has become law, suffers the same kind of condition, will not be eligible for the personal independence payment, and their support will be either from friends or family or no support at all? Is she really happy that we're deliberately creating a 2-tier system for people with profound needs and disabilities who quite rightly expect the community as a whole to recognise and support them?
They've come out in the beating sun to protest changes to disability benefits, which have left Keir Starmer feeling the heat.
Stop the cut!
The government was forced to ditch its original plans after a huge rebellion by MPs.
Liz Kendle.
Welfare Secretary Liz Kendle confirmed that current claimants will not lose out.
We believe protecting existing claimants whilst beginning to focus PIP on those with higher needs for new claimants going forward strikes the right and fair balance.
There's more money for job support.
An additional £300 million into employment support for sick and disabled people.
And universal credit will rise.
This will ensure no existing claimants are put into poverty as a result of the changes in this bill.
No existing claimants, but the government admit 150,000 new ones will be poorer, and that was too much for some Labour MPs.
I welcome progress, but I cannot countenance sick and disabled people being denied support to enable them to be independent in the future.
Having no public consultation of these plans excludes the voices of disabled people. This is not just about process. This makes disabled people worse off.
People here are holding on to hope that MPs might still reject these changes. But even if they get through, the rebels have damaged the Prime Minister's authority and delivered a stark warning about what they'll accept that government can't ignore.
This new MP still has concerns. A review of PIP won't report before the cuts come in.
Whether 30, 40, 50, I don't know, and that's a complete estimate. But so there are still people who are not happy with this bill, and I genuinely think the government should just pause it just for a little bit, get that assessment of the PIP point sorted out.
In Leicester, where Liz Kendle is the MP, we met Abigail. She was working full-time and engaged when a sudden diagnosis with a debilitating condition changed her life.
What's your message to the Labour MPs who have to vote on this?
I just wish these MPs, that when they vote, remember that anyone can suddenly become disabled and it can, devastate their lives.
She wouldn't score 4 points under the new criteria and is worried for future claimants.
We're being thrown to the wolves, basically, and it's going to have a devastating effect. And after 15 years of Tory austerity, we're now facing austerity 2.0.
This was a rebellion which threatened to derail the government's agenda. Ministers hope they've done enough to take the temperature down. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Westminster.
I would like to know what your thoughts are when it comes to Labour and this welfare reform bill. Are they truly looking to get the disabled back into work? Are they being honest and fully transparent about their motives? Is this just Rachel from accounting trying to juggle the numbers to fit in with her imaginary fiscal rules? Labour under Keir Starmer have been bringing in policies that are the Tories' wet dream come true. Are they now Lino Labour in name only? Let me know in the comments below. Have you subscribed to the 2 Davies channel to get the news and politics from a Scottish perspective, or the legend behind the Friday frolic that is Daily Blaze yet? Why not? What is wrong with you?